Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest bonus episode of the Stephen King podcast. I am here with a returning guest. That would be writer Marc Watson. Hello, Marc. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Lou. Thank you very much for having me today.
Not a problem. And you were back on episode 14, which was back last September 2019. And at that time, you were promoting your short story collections, Catching Hell Part 1 and Catching Hell Part 2. I believe you have a little bit of an update on that. But before we get into that too much, why don't you just let the listeners know who you are in a short form. If people want to get into a deeper dive of who you are, they can listen to episode 14 where we go over your dislike of Ontario and other things. So
But I grew out of Ontario. Let's not say I dislike. Maybe I said it then, but I'm just going to say I grew out of it.
No, you were very sure to make it clear that you did not dislike Ontario. I'm just pulling your leg.
All right. Well, as you said, my name is Marc Watson. I am a genre fiction author from Calgary, Alberta. I am a father of two. I'm a happily married man, and I have a full-time job. And this writing gig is my serious hobby, I like to call it. So I have been in this writing world seriously, like applying myself to it since February. Actually, now that I mentioned that, today specifically is the 5-year anniversary of me being on this writing journey.
Wow.
So I've got that going for me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was actually the leap day of 2016. So today's as close as I'm going to get to a 5-year anniversary. So
okay, so let's start right there then. What is it? How do you feel now as a 5-year veteran writer as opposed to when you started?
I do not feel anywhere near as intimidated. I remember when I started that there was a lot of aspects of this that I was just completely unprepared for and knew nothing about, because I was a writer in that I enjoyed writing, but all the other aspects of the business, I had no clue. Mm-hmm. And now I'm by no means an expert, but after releasing my own self-published book and working in the audiobook field and dealing with publishers and things switching and editors and all of that, it's much less intimidating than it has been in the past. And every single year I grow more and more and get more comfortable in it.
Mm-hmm. And how about from a writing craft perspective itself? What's changed for you? Are you doing anything different than when you started out?
Not particularly, no. I find that I was very comfortable in the routine that I had kind of set. As we had discussed before, just as a brief reminder, I do very little writing at home, if any. I do most of my writing at work, in my office, at lunchtime. And I haven't deviated from that. I haven't been very prolific during this pandemic time. Other things have been going on, and I admit that. But it's been very, very similar. I do my best not to change, because I find that's how I am the most effective.
Okay. And just to refresh my memory, are you a plotter or a pantser?
Pure pantser. Pure pantser. I think the last time we spoke, I gave myself 5% plotter, and I think even that was being generous. 5% in that I have a story and I know how I want to write it, and I'm pretty sure I know the ending.
Okay.
And I think that's about it. Other than that, it's just, well, let's see where this keyboard takes me.
Right. And you also mentioned that at the time you were a part-time student at the Athabasca University. Is that still ongoing, or have you graduated?
At the moment, no, I haven't done anything in the last year. There was a few things that I was still doing when last we spoke, but during this pandemic time, I've been kind of focused on other things. And also, surprise, it's not super financially feasible for a lot of people right now. And although I've been much luckier than a lot of people that I know when it comes to employment and the funds coming in, it still hasn't been robust fun times at the Watson house. So I have not been doing that recently, but I still stay in contact with them. I see what's going on. I see what classes are coming up. I always make sure I'm plugged in.
Okay. The courses that you took, were they creative courses, creative writing or fiction courses?
It was a mix of both. It was about creating better fiction, character identification, and making sure that my writing craft was up to snuff. But it was also dealing with a lot of the technical side of things and the business side of things as well, because I wanted to make myself as well-rounded as I possibly could, because I knew that for the most part in this writing journey, I would be going it alone.
Mm-hmm.
I'd get help from people, but it's all about how I plotted it myself. And I wanted to make sure I had a little bit of education in that. So
right.
I had my hands on both sides of that.
Yeah, that's a very good model to follow. I know that even like professional writers, like if you listen to, I don't know if you listen to Writing Excuses with Brandon Sanderson and that, but he really stresses that you should have multiple sticks in the fire. So he does like not just his fantasy novels, but YA and occasionally science fiction and whatnot. So it's good for writers to be multifaceted in their tool set and what they're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I'm very comfortable with doing. I know some that are very set in their ways, and that's how they are most comfortable. They stay in their lane and they appreciate the fact that that is where they are the strongest. But coming at this the way that I did, and with the idea that I wanted to be as well-rounded as possible, even if I still continue to write in the same genres, which for the most part I do, I want to make sure that I'm not ignorant to what's going on in the industry around me.
Right. One question that I've been asking lately because of this unique times that we're living in, and you sort of touched upon it a little already, is because of the COVID situation and that, are you still working? Do you work at home remotely, or do you actually go into an office?
I have mostly been in the office during this period of time. I was deemed essential in my office for quite some time. It is. And I'm not complaining about it. Like I said, I know a lot of people who weren't as lucky.
Yeah.
But starting in about the beginning of December, when Alberta started going into more serious lockdowns, our building was, for the most part, cleared out.
Right.
And my department was made almost exclusively work from home. Now that I've said that, starting this year, I've been going back into the office more and more, because in my role, I help prepare getting all of these people back into the office in such large quantities. So I want to make sure that I'm there and actually seeing things, as opposed to just guessing and looking at maps and stuff on my computer. So today specifically, no, I am at home. Yeah. But I will probably be going in tomorrow and for the rest of the week. And I expect it'll be that way through March. And then at the end of March, everybody should be coming back.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes, we'll hopefully get to some sense of normality. But I'm curious now then, as a writer, how has the pandemic affected you creatively, or has it not? Have you found it harder to write? Or because I always feel like if I'm writing, this is, well, these are such made up trivial issues as opposed to what a lot of people are going through, just trying to get food on the table. So I don't know if you have that kind of mindset at all, or are you able to plow through?
I am with you 100%. I have been not very prolific during this time. I would say that in the last year, so that's like we're almost at a full calendar year of this, I have probably written about 5,000 words, I would guess. So like not very much at all. And my main reason behind that is I'm a father of two. I'm a family man who has a family to help look after. Right. And the times have just been so strange over the last year that it has been counterproductive to my writing mindset. And as a genre fiction writer, I'm kind of in that feeling where, well, I can't really write anything as strange as the times that we're living in right now. But I also someone who doesn't necessarily want to pull from the times that we're living in right now, because I think that's going to be incredibly common over the next few years in a lot of the fiction that we're going to see, which is fine. It's just not what I'm looking to write. So I have not done very much on the writing side of things. That said, on the writing business side of things, I've tried to keep myself as busy as I can and learn a bunch of different skills and do a bunch of different things that I had never really done before, on top of doing a bunch of other really weird things. Like I know some people had their sourdough moments and whatnot. I moved on to what did I do? Oh, fixing watches. I learned how to fix watches. And I also have been learning how to pick locks. Lately, I've been working on up close sleight of hand magic, like all these little weird things that I'm just like, well, I've got time to work on this now. Right.
And it probably will fit into your writing at some point down the road too.
I expect it will. Yeah. I expect that it will. Yeah. Because it's fun and it's interesting and it's creative and an author has to be a jack of all trades.
That's right. So, a lock-picking magician is, that's a good thing to have.
that plays into so many genres.
Exactly.
I'm just setting myself up for success.
Exactly. Okay, so you said you were doing a lot of things on the business side, and before we got on the air, you mentioned a couple of things that you had done. So let's start with your collection that we talked about on our previous podcast, and that was your Catching Hell
Mm-hmm.
Part 1 and Part 2 collections. What did you do with those?
So over the course of the past year, it's one. The Catching Hell series is one long kind of epic, and then there's also a book of short stories that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Catching Hell series was being put out by a publisher based out of Markham, Ontario, and over the course of the last year, that publisher didn't go under, but they sold their imprint to another one.
Mm.
And so it was supposed to be a carte blanche move, just moving sideways.
Mm-hmm.
And I started speaking to this new imprint, and they were like, yeah, no, we're happy to take on all of the previous works that were underneath this publisher. And I didn't feel it. I'm again, something that we had touched on before in our previous talk. I'm very kind of selective about the publishers that I work with. I seek them out specifically. And I mean, for most writers, they'd be like, oh, great, this is status quo, nothing changes. But I just wasn't feeling that same sense of connection with this new publisher. And I didn't want to just churn the book out. So by, a little bit of back and forth with my other publisher from my first book, so this would be Fluky Fiction, they said, it's not really our genre, but we like working with you, and we hope you like working with us. And I think that we can do something with this because it's already done, and it's already an established story. So we'd love to release it for you, maybe put our own little coat of paint on it, as it were. So making sure that their editor takes a look at it and get a new cover for it and just reissue it. So that was that business side of things. So it will be coming out, I expect, the beginning of April. I believe the April 9th is the kind of tentative target date for the re-release of Catching Hell Part 1 Journey, and then Part 2 Destination will follow sometime later this year.
Cool. So just a little bit more on the business side. So you were with this new publisher and you wanted to go back to Fluky Press. Did you have to get some sort of release signed by the other publisher, or did they just let their option lapse, or how did you?
They had all of their options. They basically had them all lapse, and then all of the authors were signing new contracts with this new publication, which was based out of the UK. So because in our contracts it had said, in the event that we go out of business, or like it listed all these different changes, like bankruptcy or whatever, then everything goes back to the authors themselves, which from what I've seen in the contracts I've had so far is somewhat standard.
Right.
And so they established right away, like the president of the company established and sent out an email that said, so in essence, we will be terminating the contracts, but they will then be picked up and you'll be contacted directly. Like everybody got a free pass, right? Like there was nothing that this new publisher wasn't going to be picking up from them. They wanted to make sure that everybody stayed on board if they wanted to. And some folks didn't, and I was one of them. Right.
So I just asked because, if some of the listeners are writers on the way, so they want to know, I think they're interested in this kind of stuff. So thanks for sharing that. So you have this collection now it's Fluky Press, right? Am I saying that right? So
Fluky Fiction.
Fluky Fiction, sorry.
So Fluky Fiction will now have Catching Hell Part 1, Catching Hell Part 2, and they, of course, have my debut book, Death Dresses Poorly. Then I also have my collection of short stories called Between Conversations, Tales from the World of Ryujin, and that was one that I released independently and self-published last September. And Fluky Fiction helped with that because they were the editors on that one, so they get the editing credit for it because I love working with them and we go together well.
Okay, and so what's the release schedule on all of these books that you have with them now?
So Death Dresses Poorly is out right now. It's been out for a few years, and there is an audiobook incoming. I can talk about that in a little bit, but Catching Hell Part 1 Journey should be out April 9th, as I said, and then we're still planning the release of Destination. We want to make sure we give the first one enough room to breathe because that's something I never did the first time when I originally released these, because I kind of hit them back to back because they were both finished and ready to go. So yeah, it'll spread out over the course of this year, but I'm not going to be like, here's my book, and 2 months later, here's another one, because that's not a great way to build a reader base.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so did we cover all your print books now, or was there another one?
Yeah, so there's the 4 print books that I've got. Yes.
Okay. And then you've decided to enter into the world of audiobooks, which is surprisingly a really growing market. I know, again, I'm going to refer to Brandon Sanderson. He remarked in one of his podcasts or interviews that it makes up almost 40% of his business, which I was really surprised by when I heard that. So this is a market that maybe has grown because of the pandemic, and people are just looking for alternative methods of listening to stories while they're doing stuff around the house, I guess, or whatnot, or maybe going out for walks, trying to get some exercise. But what prompted you to decide to do this?
Boredom, pure boredom.
Okay, well, that's an honest answer.
Well, that's the only kind I give.
Okay.
Well, it's true that, like I said, I touched on all these other little things that I had been doing and I had been learning. And I was having a conversation with one of my contemporaries at one point, and they were mentioning the audiobook world and how they were looking for someone to record their audiobook and whatnot. And I realized that I had an excellent opportunity because I suddenly had time and I had the general knowledge and ability. I knew I had to educate myself a little bit, which I like to think I did in kind of the rudimentary way that we do these days by watching a lot of YouTube videos and reading a lot of articles.
Right.
And I invested in some equipment and I gave myself a little setup, which I freely admit is in my master bedroom closet because they work fantastically. I don't care what anybody says.
Right.
And I educated myself in the Audible program, which is a very common free to use program that a lot of people use for recording all kinds of things, and got the right plugins. And then I went to Fluky Fiction and I said, I want to do this, and I want to do this with you guys if I can, because I wanted to do it for Death Dresses Poorly. Because for number one, coming right out of the gate, a 46,000 word book is probably a good place to start.
Right.
And the second one is it's a very personal story because of the characters who are in it are basically just alternate reality versions of myself. So I felt that even if I hired somebody else to do this, which was kind of a possibility at one point until I found out exactly how expensive voice artists are, it was something that I felt if I wanted it to done right, I had to do it myself because these characters were me. And I was able to, like, it's a very dialogue heavy story and it's a very sarcastic one. It's a very darkly humorous one. And I know where to put the emphasis on the words that I was trying to put across into people's heads. And I know what certain scenes required of me reading them, how much emotion, how much empathy, how much sympathy, how much vitriol had to go into each word. So then I set everything up and did my best to record it, and every once in a while getting interrupted by cars driving by or my dog barking in the backyard or something like that. I developed tactics as the time went on as to how to record most effectively, and I had it completed and it was all mastered and benchmarked, and I gave it to my publisher and they've got their thumbs up, and it is in the ACX system now, and they give kind of a rough, as long as it passes everything, should be up in 30 days. And that was about a week ago.
Okay.
And I've heard from some folks that, mine was up in 2 weeks, or mine was up in 3 weeks, or mine was up in a few days. So I wish I could say on this date it will be out, but I am at the mercy of Amazon at the moment.
Okay. Can you tell our listeners what ACX is? And me too.
Sure. ACX is the kind of behind the scenes Audible standard for Audible. Okay. So for the most popular of the audiobook retail out there. And Audible is just, it's Amazon. It's Kindle's voice. Like it's their audiobook format side of things. And then ACX is the technical side behind everything. So ACX has certain standards that you have to meet when it comes to how loud something can be, how quiet something can be, how long, how short, so you have to meet all these benchmarks that they set. And they make it very simple. And Audacity, who I do the recording with, has plugins that you can throw in that gives you an idea. Like it's like this is too high, this is too low, this is too quiet, this is much too loud. Like and then with a little bit of research, you can learn how to kind of hit all those sweet spots and get it at ACX's standards. Okay.
So when you're recording, do you record a mono track or stereo, or what do you do there?
I was recording just a mono track. Okay. Because with the setup that I had, I found that it came out better. Okay. So I didn't feel that when I was listening to the playback that there was anything really lost from recording it that way. Right. And when I was listening to some other audiobooks, just for kind of a sense of a lot of things, and mono versus stereo was one of them, I wasn't personally noticing a ridiculous difference unless the production quality, so like we're talking something from like one of the big publishers that they poured a ton of money into,
Right.
was A1, top of the line.
Right.
And even then it was more like a audio play sometimes from what I was listening to, right? Like it was almost like back in like the early 1900s, everybody crowded around the radio listening, and I'm like, well, that which is all well and good for them, but I am but a small fish in a big pond. So
Right.
I made sure I met standards that I was happy with and put it out there that way.
Can you give an elevator pitch of what your book is about?
Yeah. So Death Dresses Poorly, for the audiobook, is the story of Ethan, who's a 20-something young man who has recently escaped from a emotionally abusive relationship with his mother, and is returning home from her funeral, which isn't spoiling anything. It happens right in the first chapter, and is in a plane crash where he is the only survivor. And afterwards he is confronted by Death, who wants to know why he didn't die, because Death has been trying to recruit Ethan to become the new Death. So Ethan doesn't want to die because he's just broken out and started his own life, and Death isn't very good at interpersonal relationships, as you can probably assume. And it's the two of them going back and forth, and Death trying to convince Ethan that this is a role that he should take, because in this world Death is cyclical. And I like to say it's 20-year-old me kind of versus 55-year-old me. And I think everyone can agree that if you were to take your 20-year-old self and your 50-year-old self and put them together, although you'd be very similar, you probably wouldn't agree on very much. And that's exactly what these two characters are like as they go through this journey.
All right. Yeah, I can fully embrace that, because I'm older than 50. So I know that I wouldn't agree with a lot of things I did when I was younger.
Exactly.
You know what they say, youth is wasted on the young, but
it really is.
So a little more on the technical side, the whole record, like how many words or how many pages is your book?
It is just about 46,000 words.
Okay.
So a weekend read, nothing too heavy duty,
right.
Pretty light duty.
And how long did it take you to record it?
I recorded it over a course of 4 main sessions.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good.
And those sessions usually ran for between an hour and 2 hours or so. And then there was also other recordings that I'd like jump in quickly and do kind of in between,
right.
because I would hear one of those aforementioned jacked up trucks ripping through the background, right. that I totally missed in the first place, or I realized that I had missed something. So 4 main recording sessions, and then probably a half a dozen just quickly set things up, jump in and fix things to edit in afterwards.
And did you add any music or anything?
No, I was asked if I wanted to by my publisher, and I said that for this one, I'm probably not going to, even though in my kind of repertoire, in my quiver of creative arrows, I do have a couple of songs that I've put together myself that I thought maybe probably could have matched up with it.
Right.
Like that was just me like playing around with GarageBand a bunch.
Yep.
And I didn't end up doing that. I thought maybe I wanted to, but I also kind of wanted to get this done because there were some other things that I wanted to focus on. And I think that would have just ended, or it would have had another step that, not that I was too lazy to take it, I just didn't think that it was really necessary to make this a complete package. I like it just where it ended up.
Okay, very good. And of course, at this point, unfortunately, you don't have much feedback yet because it hasn't been released. But are you thinking of doing this sort of audio conversion with any of your other books?
I think I would like to. I know that with the entire main Catching Hell duology, that's about 250,000 words. That's a whole lot more than 4 sessions in a closet. And my next likely option would be my short story collection Between Conversations, because it's very distinctly broken up. The other part of that, like I've been presented with some ideas for that from my publisher about how we might be able to do something creative with it, even though that they didn't actually publish that book. They just did the editing for it. But on the other side, I think there is still also some characters in there that I'd really love to inhabit. I mean, one of the main characters of Catching Hell is a large and imposing Scottish phoenix by the name of Nixon. And although I'm certain I would butcher it, I would love to play with that accent for a little bit. And there's just some other characters that I would like. I'm a drama geek from high school, so I think that there's a lot of potential there for me to have a bit of fun. And it came out at about 67,000 words. So it's more than what Death Dresses Poorly was, but it's still not ramping up to the epic kind of story that Catching Hell would be. I might get to that at some point, but I had a lot of fun doing Death Dresses Poorly, so I don't know why I wouldn't entertain the fact of doing it again.
Right. Okay, so where are things with you now? Are you working on a new project right now, or are you still toying with what you want to do next?
Entertaining my children. Which isn't going to be that bad because we're starting to get back to like extracurricular activities here. So it's
right.
But even then, that's going to take up a lot of my time because then I'm running them around places and I'm a coach. And so like that eats up a lot of time as well. There's a reason I only write at work. But more specifically to your question, still trying to suss it out. I believe the last time we spoke, I was talking about a story that I had probably about 2/3 finished, and that's the story that I had written at 5,000-ish words during the course of the pandemic for. And I'm still not there with it yet. I'm not there with really any of it. I had spent so much of the pandemic trying to put together and self-publish my Between Conversations book, and then that rolled into doing the audiobook and all these little things that creative time that I had was taken up doing these other things, which is fine. But I mean, anybody who's spoken to me right from like that 5 years ago today has known that I don't plan on doing this for a living. I treat it as a serious hobby. I treat it with respect, but it is still just a hobby for me. So I have to make sure that these other aspects of my lives are looked after first. Right. So writing things, I have enough irons in the fire right now when it comes to audiobook releasing and this re-release of Catching Hell, and still marketing. Like Between Conversations is only a few months old, so I'm still having conversations and interviews and talking about that as well. So there's all these other aspects of it. So creatively, not much, but technically and on the business side of things, I've never been busier.
All right, very good. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention that hasn't come up in the course of the interview?
No, I think we've done pretty good at covering all the. We got to talk about how I'm learning how to pick locks, so that's always important, right? But no, it's been a very strange time, and I've spoken to a lot of writers and some of them have said I've never been more creative in my life because I have all this free time and I have to fill it, and I guess kind of I'm envious of them in some way, but but I'm like I haven't stopped working personally, so nothing much has really changed for me, and I just want to say that I hope everybody who is listening to this is doing okay and looking after their mental health and doing whatever you can to stay as centered as you possibly can in these crazy times.
Yeah, it's been interesting because this is a question I ask everybody that I've been interviewing since the last year, since the COVID started. And by and large, most of them have said they've been able to truck forward, which I guess is the mark of, writers. They're full time, so that this is their job. So they really don't have a choice either. So, but it's just interesting. I'm just curious because people, just like every writer has their own writing process, people react differently to the same set of circumstances, which I find fascinating. So.
Yeah, it's the absolute truth. And even just browsing an average day on my Facebook news feed with all the writer friends that I have on there, I see the full dichotomy. Yeah. I see the people who have been like, I'm going to release 5 books this year. And the people who are like, I haven't even looked at a book since 2019. So there is a wide spectrum out there. So however you as an author are dealing with it, there's no wrong way, and it's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, it's been a blast having you on again, Mark. I wish you all the best with your future projects, and I guess when you have something new, you'll be back on the show again.
I would love to, Lou. I love having a conversation with you.
Yeah, right. Very good. And who knows, next time you might have like a full-blown recording studio or something going on.
I'll get to that point. Anything's a step up from a closet that is also lined with puzzle mats. So
okay, there you go. All right, you take care now. Thanks for coming on.
You too. Thank you very much.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.